Hello everyone and welcome back to the YouTube channel. I'm going to be trying something a little bit different for this particular time lapse. I'm going to do a voiceover instead. For this particular time lapse I decided that I wanted to have a car go by my house. I wanted to paint this little mango here for a food token that I wanted to work on. I wanted to do this kind of like Renaissance style painting for a token, and I was going to do an apple originally, and I decided, well, if I do a mango, that's kind of tying back to my heritage from the country that I come from, India, and it would also give me something unique to work on with all the color shifts that a mango has and all the subtle lighting. The reference for this was actually a mango that I went and bought 12 of, and I took a bunch of photos in my studio. And I decided to start this particular painting with a grisaille. This is the first time I ever actually did a grisaille, and for the record, this is the first time that I am painting on linen. So it was an experiment in many ways, but I decided to see where it would go and see how I liked the grisaille technique. So I'll let you sit with the time lapse for a minute while it runs, and then I'll come back and talk about color when we get to me going on with the full color pass of this painting. Once I let the grisaille dry for a couple days, or a couple weeks actually, and I did an entire other painting in that time, which I'll be doing my next video on, I decided that it was finally time to come in with color. And like I said, I chose a mango partly because mangoes have such interesting color shifts. We tend to think of mangoes as yellow, but when I looked at this particular reference photo that I had, it was shifts of green and yellow, and there were red near the tones, and I wanted to really play with blending all those colors together to give some visual interest. Now, I don't know how well I did on that particular front. I find that one thing is interesting when I'm looking at my paintings is that I tend to like them as I'm doing them, finish them, hate them for a good couple of days to sometimes a couple of weeks, and then I'll come back at them and look at them again and I'll say, okay, you know, actually that wasn't that bad. And the same held true for this particular painting. When I came back to it, I realized that I didn't hate what I came up with. I definitely think there are areas that I could improve, and I don't think any painter would tell you otherwise. I think we all have these hankering thoughts of we could definitely go back and do that better, but overall I think, you know, this mango came out decently okay. I'm using a big soft brush there just to soften some of those edges that I worked on, because I realized I had been using all these tiny brushes and making a little bit of rough transitions. I wanted to smooth everything out. One thing I will tell you that I kind of regret doing, and I'm looking back at this now, is that I made that highlight there way too hot and I made it way too focused. It almost looks like metal, honestly, but in the moment I didn't really see that. The background I decided to keep rather simple, and I said I wanted to make this almost like a Renaissance style piece, and I wanted to have very muted tones, very dark browns, but I put a little bit of green in that background just to tie it to the foreground. This entire painting, honestly, it's very simple in its technique, but I enjoyed doing it because it definitely let me work on some let me practice on new techniques and new, I'd say, modes of painting that I hadn't really worked with before. Blending a fruit like this was actually really challenging, and I was happy that I took it on, especially since I've only been oil painting for about a year at this point. In terms of, you can see me going back here, going over a few things on that mango again. In terms of the table that it's sitting on, this was my first time painting wood, and let me tell you, to get the subtle color shifts that wood has took me a lot more effort than I thought it would, but I'm actually really glad with how the wood turned out. Believe it or not, I'm actually more proud of the wood in this painting than the mango, despite how proud I am of the mango. I added some hot color bands here using different colors than just Van Dyke Brown. I think that was burnt umber that I put right down there, and it just gives a little bit of warmth that I think was much needed in the wood. I definitely made the foreground a bit too sharp, so you can see me going back there with a slightly bigger brush just to blur it out a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a softer foreground and draw your eye in towards this mango. And there you have it. That was my mango painting, and here's the whole thing. You can see all that lovely texture of linen. I'm really happy with it. I'm really glad with what came out, and I suppose this is where I gotta wrap up my voiceover, so thank you for hanging out and watching this video. I'll see you next time.